Hello, my name's Steve Larson, and today I want to talk to you about oligarchy versus democracy. Now, the term oligarchy comes from a Greek word which I can't pronounce, but it means few governing. Um, there we go. Uh, an oligarchy is a power structure that allows a few people to control the government, the politics of a country. It doesn't necessarily have to be the richest people. It usually is, but it doesn't have to be. Supreme Court Justice Brandeis, who was on the court during the Great Depression, said, "We may have a democracy or we may have wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both." What the oligarchy does, and all types of oligarchies, is they have enough power to create government policies that benefit themselves to the detriment of the rest of society. Now, oligarchies aren't uncommon. Here's a few. Russia, it's an oligarchy. You may think Putin controls Russia, but actually he's part of an oligarchy that has been in power since the 1400s. China is also an oligarchy. After Mao Zedong died, the oligarchy that came to power in China are the families of the eight immortals, which are the eight individuals that opened up China. They control most of the state-owned businesses. They cut the deals. In fact, the families intermarry. Sounds a little bit like the way the mafia runs. Saudi Arabia is an oligarchy. It has the royal family. And even though it is a monarchy, the monarch shares powers with the descendants of the person who founded Saudi Arabia. Iran is a clerical oligarchy. When the Ayatollah Khomeini came to power in 1979, when he kicked the Shah out, he would not allow his family into government, but his predecessor did. The new Ayatollah brought his family and friends in, and they actually run the country. And even though Iran has a president, he owes his position to the oligarchs. Venezuela is interesting. Prior to when Hugo Chavez took control of Venezuela, there were 200 families that owned 80% of the wealth. Now, he took that away, but he didn't eliminate the families. And with the help of the US, they are probably going to come back to power there. There is something called the iron law of oligarchy, and this phrase was coined by Robert Michels, who was a German sociologist. What he proposed was rule by the elite or oligarchy is inevitable within the democratic organizations. And what he means by that is there's always someone that is going to be really good at running government, and they're going to run it for their benefit. See, oligarchies are very common, maybe more common than democracies. Now, we've been taught in America that we're a representative democracy. We elect people at the local, state, and federal level to go to government and represent our interests. That's the theory. Does it really work that way in America? In 2014, there was a study done by two professors. One was from Princeton University, Martin Gillens, and the other was from Northwestern, Benjamin Page. They wrote a paper entitled Testing Theories of American Politics, Elites, Interest Groups, and Average Citizens. The paper should have been, or could have just asked the simple question, is America an oligarchy? What they concluded in the study is that the wealthy few control government policies while the average American has very little power. They reached that conclusion when they looked at laws passed between 1981 and 2002. They looked at what the public opinion of the legislation was at the time, and who the legislation benefited. What they found was it really didn't matter what the public thought about the legislation. They liked it, they didn't like it, made no difference about whether it was passed into law or not. What did make a difference is who it benefited. If it benefited the rich, the powerful, the corporate interest, it was much more likely to pass into law. So their conclusion was, in the United States, our government is dominated by powerful billionaires and organizations, and they are the ones that direct the laws made to benefit themselves. So the answer to the question is yes, America's an oligarchy. Now, this shouldn't come as a surprise to you if you're a student of history. This particular political cartoon is about Standard Oil, and it was done in 1904. And it shows what the public's view was of Standard Oil. Its tentacles were everywhere. Government, into the commodities, into the transportation industry, so badly that in 1911, Standard Oil was broken up. Well, we don't break them up anymore. The oligarchs in America are referred to as the donor class. These individuals, corporation, and dark money groups largely fund America's political process. And every state has them. Oligarchs, we spent $5.2 billion in the 1918 off-year election. America has more billionaires than any other planet or any other country on earth. Some are good and some aren't so good. In this particular slide, from Kansas, the Koch brothers, from Nevada, Sheldon Adelson, New York has Mike Bloomberg, Washington has Bill Gates. There's oligarchs everywhere in America. Now, we've also got a Supreme Court that in Citizen United says that money equals speech. How could we not have an oligarchy with this kind of a law? And just because they're rich doesn't necessarily make them an oligarch. An oligarch is someone that must use their wealth to control the political process to get legislation that benefits them. The two most notable oligarchs in America are the Koch brothers. Now, David on the left has passed away. Charles Koch is still around, and he runs the business and their political operation. The Kochs have been funding and directing the conservative movement and the Republican Party for over 40 years. They do it through direct campaign contributions and through a bunch of different organizations. Americans for Prosperity, ALEC, which is the American Legislative Exchange Council, the Club for Growth, Freedom Works, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and the NRA, to cite only a few. Now, if you look at the Open Up the Country protests that are going on right now, you'll find out that Freedom Works and Americans for Prosperity are the ones organizing and funding these events all over the country. The Koch brothers say they're against the protest, but the people running the protests are the organizations they direct. So it sounds to me like they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth on this one. Here's the way I like to think of it. When a politician takes money from an oligarch, they also agree to take the oligarch's phone calls. What the oligarchs are buying is access and a seat at the table. If the politician doesn't take the oligarch's money, that money goes to the person who will be running against the politician at the next primary. That's the way the system works in America, and that's the way they maintain control. Now, I do like this cartoon, Peasants for Plutocracy. Plutocracy is just another word for oligarchy. I have yet to figure out why people fight so hard for institutions that care so little about them. Now, I'll give you another form of proof that we don't live in a representative democracy. 90% of the people in America want universal background checks for guns. 90%. That means in every district, in every state, the majority of the citizens want a specific piece of legislation passed. We have only 9 Republicans that have come out in favor of universal background checks, and they're in the House. Nobody in the Senate. And 3 of the 9 in the House are not running for re-election. How is it possible for people that we elect to represent our interests don't bring forward legislation that 90% of the people want? To me, that's pretty solid proof that we don't live in a representative democracy. So should we care? America has probably always been an oligarchy, but there's a couple of reasons I think we should care. One of the reasons is our debt is up to over $25 trillion. That's nearly $75,000 for every citizen. The donor class doesn't want to pay their fair share of taxes, and without that, the debt is just going to go up and up and up. We're also headed into a second Great Depression, which is going to require an awful lot of government spending. It all comes down to money. If we don't have money, we cannot fix America's problems. And by problems, I mean poverty, hunger, healthcare, education, and inequality. We can't fix our potholes. We can't repair our bridges. In the working class, they often have to do 2 jobs to put food on the table and pay the rent. Another real good example of the way it works is Salon Magazine just came out with a Senate report that the Senate put a $90 billion tax cut in the coronavirus relief legislation for millionaires. Think about that. Why would the people that we elect, when we have these kind of problems, and my God, we got over 30% unemployment right now and it's going up. Why would they feel it was necessary to make the already rich richer? I wrote a song a few years ago because I like to write songs. And I called it The Club, and it was kind of a metaphor for George Carlin comedy routine. And I'll read just the first verse to you. I'm not in their club. They won't let me in. They say I'm not rich enough. My portfolio's too thin. I'm not a rich man's son. I'm not a CEO. They won't let me join their club. They say I have to go. Well, my sentiments exactly. Now, can we get out of this mess? Yeah, yes, we can. That's the short answer. It's not going to be easy. The picture on the screen right now is Greta Thunberg. She's the young lady who, on her own, has done an awful lot for climate change. She's from Sweden. It's a different culture. We put her up there because Sweden has done it. At the turn of the last century, Sweden was among the most unequal countries in Europe. From the mid-1800s, they had only allowed the top 20% of property owners to vote in elections in Sweden. And as a result, property owners were very wealthy and everybody else was poor. Then came the Great Depression, and in 1932, the Swedish Social Democratic Party came to power. They gave everybody the right to vote. And those people started voting in their own self-interest. Progressive taxes were put in place for income, wealth, and property. And that money was used to benefit everyone. And Sweden developed the egalitarian society that we see today. So, can it work? Yes, it can work, but it's not easy. The first thing we have to do is get rid of Citizens United and get the private money out of the political system. If we can't do that, we will continue to be an oligarchy. As long as the rich and powerful can write checks to politicians, those politicians will rig the system to benefit their donors. Now, I'm going to conclude now, and we're going to urge you to go to YouTube and watch this video. But here, and this is the reason I really made this presentation, because what I want to put across to you is the next time you're wondering why in the hell this happened or that happened in government, why do the rich always get the breaks and we don't? It's because the oligarchy works for the few, not the many. It doesn't work for me and you. We aren't in their club. Now, the reason this video is important is because it talks about legislation that's being promoted now around the country. The legislation will stop political bribery, end secret money, and fix our broken elections. And I suggest you watch it. Thank you very much.
We've always said our best days are ahead of us. Freedom, opportunity, a better world for our children. But right now, that future is being taken from us. And while we don't always agree on how to turn the tide, there's one thing everyone can agree on. Something's broken. If you can't find a job, then you can't get insured, while the family next door fights foreclosure. While our country drowns in debt, your tax dollars go to waste, and 16 million American kids are in poverty. Pollution is everywhere. Society is fractured. Americans everywhere are barely getting by. This is not the America we were promised. This is not of, by, and for the people. We the people have been replaced, and money is all that matters in politics. Bribery has been legalized, elections are auctions, and our government is so corrupt that it no longer works for its people. We can fix this, but we can't just change the rules. We have to change the entire game. This is the American Anti-Corruption Act, and this changes everything. Eliminate corruption, end the auction, stop the bribery, get money out and the people will get back in. Economists and environmentalists, veterans and conservatives, activists for social justice, global warming, financial reform, and free markets. From the Tea Party to Occupy, Democrats, Republicans, independents, we will stand together as 1 million united citizens, because this is not about right versus left, it's about right versus wrong. And when there's 1 million of us standing, we'll get 2, and then 3, and we'll keep on standing until we don't need to ask our broken Congress to pass this law. We'll simply tell them, the time has come.